probably called 911 before, maybe for a car accident, a break-in, a medical emergency, and every time, someone picked up, someone calm, someone trained, someone human. But the three people in these stories, what answered their call wasn't any of those things, and none of them have ever been fully explained. These are three scary Chiuri 911 calls. Don't listen alone. This story comes from a woman named Rachel. She lived alone in a small house in rural Ohio. It was a Tuesday night in November, cold, quiet, the kind of night where every sound feels louder than it should. Rachel was getting ready for bed when she heard it. A slow, deliberate knock at her front door. 3 knocks, then silence. She checked the time, 2:17 a.m. She didn't open the door. She didn't look through the window. She did the only thing that made sense. She called 911. The operator picked up immediately. 911? What's your emergency? Rachel whispered that someone was knocking on her door in the middle of the night and she was home alone. There was a pause. Then the operator said something that made Rachel's blood run cold. We know, Rachel. We've been watching. Rachel froze. She hadn't given her name. She hadn't given her address either. And in Ohio, 911 systems do pull location data automatically. But the caller's name, that doesn't come through. The operator would have had to already know who she was. Rachel hung up, immediately called back. A different operator answered, completely professional, dispatched a unit to her address. When the officers arrived, they found no one at the door. No footprints in the mud outside. No signs of anyone having been there at all. Rachel filed a complaint with the 911 dispatch center the next morning. They reviewed the call logs. There was no record of her first call. Only the second one existed in the system. The first call, the one where the operator knew her name, had simply never happened. At least, not according to any record they could find. Rachel moved out of that house 3 weeks later. She never found out who or what answered that first call. Story 2, the call that came from inside. This one comes from a 911 dispatcher named Kevin. He's worked emergency services in a mid-sized city in Texas for 11 years. In that time, he'd heard everything: overdoses, domestic calls, accidents, worse. But one call on a Friday night in August, he says he will never forget. The call came in at 11:48 p.m. No voice on the line, just breathing. Slow, steady, deliberate. Kevin followed protocol, asking if the caller needed help, announcing that police were being dispatched. Then the breathing stopped, and a voice spoke. You should check your back room, Kevin. Kevin's name was not public-facing. Dispatchers don't announce their names on calls. He had never spoken his name during the call. He looked up from his station. The dispatch floor was open plan, 40 feet across. Other dispatchers at their desks, fluorescent lights humming. Everything looked normal, except the door to the back equipment room. The one that was always locked was slightly open. Kevin notified his supervisor. Security swept the building. The back room was empty. The door lock showed no signs of tampering. They traced the call. The number it came from was an internal line, a phone located inside the dispatch center itself, in a room that had been locked. The investigation concluded it was a technical glitch, a routing error. Kevin doesn't believe that, because whatever was in that room knew his name. Story 3, the last call. The last story is the one that disturbs me most. It was shared anonymously by a 911 dispatcher from a small county in Georgia. A call came in at 3 or 4 a.m. The caller was a man, calm, almost eerily calm. He gave his name as Thomas. He gave his address And then he said, "I need you to send someone to my house. I think something is wrong with me. I've been standing in my kitchen for 6 hours and I can't remember how I got here." The dispatcher stayed on the line. Thomas was coherent, no signs of intoxication, no confusion in his speech, just that strange flat calm. While they waited for the unit, the dispatcher asked Thomas to describe what he could see around him. Thomas described his kitchen, the counter, the refrigerator, the window above the sink. And then he paused. "There's someone standing outside the window," he said. "They've been there the whole time. I think they've been watching me stand here." The dispatcher urged Thomas to move away from the window to go to an interior room. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I don't think they're outside anymore." The line went silent. Not dead. The call stayed connected. The dispatcher could still hear the ambient noise of the house, a clock ticking, a refrigerator hum, and then, very quietly, a second set of breathing. The officers arrived 4 minutes later. They found Thomas standing in the kitchen, exactly as he described, unharmed, still on the phone, still calm. When they asked him who else was in the house, Thomas looked confused. "No one," he said. "I live alone." They searched every room, every closet, every corner. The house was empty, but on the call recording, the one the dispatcher reviewed the next morning, the second set of breathing is still there, clear, steady, close. Whatever was in that house with Thomas that night, it was never found. 3 calls, 3 people who did everything right. They called for help. They stayed on the line. They waited. And still, something wasn't right. Next time your phone rings at 3 a.m., just let it go to voicemail. If you've experienced something you can't explain, a call, a voice, something that shouldn't have known your name, send it in. I read every single one. Subscribe if these stories kept you up. And whatever you do tonight, stay safe.